Welcome, travelers. You've arrived at Snooze Scholar, a quiet place where strange old ideas drift gently into dreams. Tonight, we explore ancient puzzles, calm ones, the kind that don't need solving, just soft reflection. If you enjoy slow stories, calm thoughts, and sleepy philosophy, consider subscribing. Every few nights, we wander deeper into forgotten history and gentle ideas, all delivered at the perfect pace for bedtime. Now then, picture a still road, dusty, endless. You take a slow step forward and then pause. It seems simple, obvious. You're moving. But are you? Because more than 2,000 years ago, a man named Zeno of Elea asked that very question and made the entire idea of motion feel almost impossible. Zeno wasn't trying to be dramatic. He wasn't a magician or a showman. He was a philosopher, a slow thinker with a sharp mind, trying to understand the structure of time, space, and movement itself. And what he left behind were not answers, but paradoxes. Strange little brain traps that still echo through physics, mathematics, and philosophy today. His ideas aren't loud. They don't demand anything. They just sit there, like still water, until you lean in and realize it's deeper than it looks. Zeno's paradoxes ask us to look at walking, running, reaching, and question what's actually happening. Can we ever cross an infinite number of halfway points? Is motion even real if every moment in time is still? These aren't questions we're here to solve tonight. We're here to float through them, to drift inside the quiet mystery of moving without moving. So let the day fall away. Let your shoulders drop, and follow me down a quiet, ancient path, where even the fastest man in the world can never quite catch a tortoise. To understand Zeno's paradoxes, we first need to meet the man behind them, a quiet figure from the shadows of ancient Greece, whose ideas still whisper through the halls of modern thought. Zeno of Elea was born around 490 BCE in a coastal town in southern Italy, part of the ancient Greek world. He didn't live in the shining splendor of Athens or among the marble temples of the big-name philosophers. Elea was smaller, more remote, a quiet place. The kind of city where a mind like Zeno's could roam freely through deep thought without too many distractions. He wasn't flashy. There are no grand statues of him, no dramatic stories of war or romance, and yet his thinking cut deep, deeper than many who came before or after. Zeno was a student and defender of another philosopher named Parmenides, a man who believed that all change is an illusion, and that true reality is one, eternal and unchanging. This was a radical idea at the time. Most thinkers believed in the evidence of their senses, that we can see things move, grow, transform. But Parmenides said no. Motion, an illusion. Change, a trick of perception. And Zeno, loyal to this strange and sweeping view of the world, took it upon himself to defend it. But Zeno didn't argue with emotion. He didn't shout or demand belief. Instead, he crafted gentle traps, logical puzzles designed to reveal the absurdity of what most people take for granted. He created paradoxes. And not the kind of paradoxes that just confuse for confusion's sake, but elegant, slow-blooming puzzles that force the mind to pause and say, wait, what? His goal was to show that the belief in motion, something so basic, so everyday, leads to contradictions when we try to break it down. If motion leads to nonsense, then maybe Parmenides was right. Maybe nothing really moves. Maybe the truth is stillness. Zeno's paradoxes weren't written down by him directly. What we know comes from later writers like Aristotle, who both admired and critiqued him. But what survived is enough to stir up wonder even today. He didn't build temples. He built thought experiments. Little stories with impossible outcomes. Stories that sit in your mind like pebbles in a stream, barely noticeable at first, but impossible to ignore once you feel them. So tonight, we step into that stream. We slow everything down until movement itself begins to dissolve into questions. And we begin as Zeno did, with a race, but not just any race, one between the fastest man alive and a very slow tortoise. It begins with a race. On one side, we have Achilles, the swift-footed hero of Greek myth, a warrior so fast, so strong, that no human or beast could outrun him. On the other side, a tortoise. Small, slow, almost still. Now, out of fairness, the tortoise is given a head start. Let's say 100 meters. Achilles smiles. It won't matter. He's confident. After all, he's Achilles. But then Zeno asks a simple question. Can Achilles ever actually catch the tortoise? At first, we laugh. Of course he can. It's obvious. Achilles is faster, much faster. He'll pass the tortoise in a few seconds. But Zeno says, let's look closer. Let's slow time down. When Achilles reaches the point where the tortoise started, the 100-meter mark, the tortoise has moved a little farther ahead, maybe just 10 meters. Now Achilles must reach that new point. But by the time he does, the tortoise has again moved forward, maybe only 1 meter this time, but he's still ahead. Achilles runs again, closing that tiny gap. And once more, the tortoise creeps just a little farther. And so it goes. Every time Achilles reaches where the tortoise was, the tortoise has moved, even if just a hair's breadth. Each gap gets smaller, but there's always another one. Always one more little distance to cross. Zeno's point wasn't that the tortoise would actually win. We know in real life Achilles would catch him. But the logic of the situation, when broken down into an infinite number of steps, seems to prevent it. If space and time can be divided infinitely, then no matter how small the gaps become, they never quite disappear. Achilles becomes trapped in a loop, forever approaching, never arriving. It's a puzzle, and it's beautiful in its simplicity. Zeno didn't use big math. He used imagination, a quiet kind of thinking. His paradox reveals the strangeness that hides inside the familiar. We move through space every day. We catch up. We overtake. And yet, when we zoom in close enough, the simple act of running starts to feel impossible. Zeno's challenge wasn't to defeat our senses, it was to shake them, to show that even the clearest events, like a man overtaking a tortoise, can become blurry if we look too hard. The arrow flies, the feet run, the finish line waits. But inside the mind, there's always another step to take. And sometimes, we never quite get there. Let's say you want to walk across a room. It's a quiet room, stone floor, dim light, soft shadows along the walls. You stand at one end. Your goal is to reach the other. Simple enough, but Zeno asks you to stop. Not physically, just mentally, and think about what must happen first. Before you reach the other side of the room, you must reach the halfway point. Let's say the room is 10 meters long. Your first step will take you to the 5-meter mark. Halfway there. Now, before you reach that 5-meter halfway point, you must reach half of that, 2.5 meters. And before you reach 2.5 meters, you must reach 1.25. And before that, 0.625. And 0.3125. And so on. Each step divided, each distance halved. Over and over, smaller and smaller, forever. This is the dichotomy paradox. Zeno's calm suggestion that motion is impossible because it requires you to complete an infinite number of tasks. Before you can finish the journey, you must get halfway. But halfway has a halfway, and that halfway has another, and another, and another. No matter how small the number, you never quite reach zero. So Zeno asks, how can you ever arrive anywhere if there's always another step to take first? It's not that the steps are physically hard. They're not steep hills or long roads. They're tiny, infinitesimal. But that's the point. Zeno wasn't saying we feel stuck. He was saying that logically we should be. According to this reasoning, every single movement, from a leap across a canyon, to a blink of the eye, to the falling of a leaf, requires crossing an infinite number of points. But how can we complete infinity? How can we perform a task that never ends? Of course, in real life, we cross rooms all the time. We move through space. We reach our destinations. But Zeno's paradox isn't meant to stop your feet. It's meant to slow your mind, to ask, what is motion, really? Is it continuous? Or is it made of tiny steps, like frames in a film reel, stitched together so smoothly that we mistake it for flow? The dichotomy, paradox reveals something deeper than just movement. It touches on infinity, on the way time and space behave. When we try to chop them up into ever smaller pieces, The closer we look, the more things fall apart, and yet they still hold together. A paradox, after all, is not a contradiction. It's a doorway, a soft invitation to sit with mystery, to walk halfway forever, and still arrive. Picture an archer. She draws her bowstring back in the quiet of early morning. The world is still. She exhales slowly and releases. The arrow flies. At least that's how it seems. But Zeno invites us to pause, to freeze time itself just for a moment. Let's imagine that time is not a flowing stream, but a series of tiny, indivisible moments, like frames in a film reel. One instant, then the next, and the next. Now, look at the arrow during one of those frozen moments. In that single instant, the arrow is not moving forward. It is motionless, suspended in space, occupying a fixed position. In the next moment, it appears again, slightly farther along its path, and again, motionless. At no point is the arrow in motion. It is simply here, then there, then a bit farther, always still in the moment. So if every single instant of the arrow's journey shows it perfectly still, when exactly is it moving? This is the arrow paradox. And it's more than just a riddle. It's a deep challenge to the way we understand motion itself. Zeno's argument is this: if time is made up of still moments, and in each of those moments the arrow does not move, then motion is an illusion, just a trick of memory, a mental blur we perceive when we connect the stillness together. It's like looking at a flipbook. Each page is a frozen drawing. But when you flip them quickly, the picture seems to move. Is the movement real, or is it just something your mind creates? In the gaps? Zeno didn't have high-speed cameras. He didn't know about relativity or quantum mechanics. But he knew how to ask uncomfortable questions. What is time? What is motion? Do they truly exist? Or are they just convenient illusions? You blink. The arrow is gone. But did it ever move? The arrow paradox makes us wonder. If every moment of our lives can be frozen and studied, what happens to all the things that seem to flow? Our thoughts, our breaths, our emotions? Is there a difference between how things appear and how they really are? And in those still moments, those quiet slices of time, can we find something deeper? Something unchanging? Zeno wasn't trying to stop arrows from flying. He knew they did. But he wanted to show that even the most obvious truths become strange when we look at them too closely. Sometimes the answer isn't to zoom in farther. It's to step back, to feel the wind, to trust the motion, even if we can't quite explain it. Let's imagine a stadium, not a roaring modern one, no bright lights, no music, no crowd. Just a quiet, stone-built arena in the warm stillness of ancient Greece. The kind of place where thoughts echo louder than voices. Now picture 3 rows of objects inside it. Zeno used runners or blocks, but for tonight, we'll say wooden carts lined up side by side. Row A stands still. Row B begins to move to the right. Row C begins to move to the left. All at the same steady speed. Let's say 1 cart length per moment. Now here's where the puzzle begins. Row B passes row A, and row C passes row B. Because both moving rows are traveling at equal speeds, but in opposite directions, Zeno asks us to look closely at what happens, not in total, but in relation. Each cart in row B seems to pass each cart in row A, one by one, at a normal pace. But when row C moves past row B, because they're both in motion, the carts pass each other twice as fast. From the perspective of row B, row C is zipping past. So if the carts are the same size and the time intervals are the same, how can motion relative to one row seem twice as fast? As it is relative to another? Zeno points out this inconsistency, how the same motion produces different perceptions of time and distance, depending on who's watching. From the point of view of the still row, the carts are moving steadily. But from the point of view of a moving row, that same motion appears faster, almost doubled. It sounds simple, but it quietly shatters the idea that time and speed are absolute. This is the stadium paradox. Zeno's way of gently asking, if the rate of motion changes based on your position, then what does it really mean to move at a speed? Is speed an objective fact? Or is it something relative, something that shifts depending on where you stand? He didn't have the word relativity. That would come thousands of years later with Einstein. But Zeno sensed it, the slipperiness of speed, the unreliability of fixed reference points. In the stadium, there is no single truth, only perspective, only frames of reference. And that might be the deeper message, that so much of what we consider real depends on where we're standing. Are we still? Are we moving? And what happens when two kinds of motion meet? Zeno didn't answer the question. He just held it up like a lantern and let it flicker in the dark. Behind all of Zeno's paradoxes, the racing tortoise, the frozen arrow, the silent stadium. There's a quiet idea lingering just beneath the surface: infinity. Not the kind of infinity found on math tests or chalkboards. Not the sideways number 8. But the strange, endless, almost spiritual kind. The kind that makes your mind feel like it's walking upstairs forever, never quite reaching the top. Zeno believed that space and time could be divided endlessly, that between any 2 points, there was always another point. And between that one, another still. A journey is not made of steps. It's made of half steps, and half of those. And again, infinite. This idea wasn't meant to be poetic. It was meant to be uncomfortable. Because if a task involves completing an infinite number of actions, how could it ever be done? Think of trying to reach your front door. First, you must walk halfway, then halfway again, then again, each step taking you closer, but never quite arriving. The logic holds you hostage, and infinity becomes not a vast sky, but a narrow tunnel with no exit. Zeno used infinity like a blade, a tool for slicing reality into thinner and thinner pieces until nothing made sense anymore. And yet, the world around him still moved. The tortoise still crawled. Arrows still flew. People still crossed rooms and finished races. The paradox wasn't in the world. It was in the concepts, in the way we try to understand things that aren't meant to be understood all at once. Modern thinkers have offered many solutions. Some say space and time are not infinitely divisible, that there's a smallest possible unit, a quantum of time. Others use calculus and converging series to explain how an infinite number of tiny steps can still lead to a finite distance. But those answers came long after Zeno, and even now they don't fully erase the strange feeling that infinity leaves behind, because even if the math works, the mystery remains. Infinity is a strange kind of silence. It hums in the background of everything, in numbers, in time, in the stars, in the breath between thoughts. And maybe Zeno's real gift wasn't confusion, but attention. He didn't want us to panic. He wanted us to pause, to feel the vastness in the smallest step, to notice the infinite, hiding in the moment, just before you move. Zeno never wrote a formal philosophy textbook. He didn't lay out a system of doctrines. Instead, he left us with a handful of strange riddles and let the centuries do the rest. So what did he actually mean? Some believe Zeno was simply being clever, that his paradoxes were a kind of intellectual defense, crafted to support his teacher, Parmenides Dash, who believed that motion, time, and change were illusions. Zeno's goal, then, wasn't to explain the world, but to discredit the senses, to show that trusting what we see, feet running, arrows flying, leads to contradictions when examined through reason. If reality appears to move, but logic says it can't, then maybe, just maybe, what we see is not what truly is. Others see Zeno as a proto-mathematician, accidentally stumbling onto deep truths about infinity, convergence, and the structure of the universe. Centuries later, thinkers like Aristotle and Archimedes would wrestle with Zeno's puzzles. And much later still, the birth of calculus gave new tools to understand them. Calculus showed that an infinite series of smaller and smaller steps can still add up to a finite total. That Achilles can catch the tortoise, mathematically speaking. That motion, though sliced into infinity, still flows. And yet, Zeno's questions linger, because the math may resolve the quantity, but it doesn't always resolve the mystery. Philosophers today still study Zeno Dash, not to solve him, but to sit with him, to consider what his paradoxes say. About the limits of logic, the edges of thought, and the strange way reality dances between clarity and confusion. Some say his paradoxes expose a gap between language and experience. That we struggle to describe motion not because it's unreal, but because words and symbols are too stiff to capture its flow. Others say Zeno tapped into something existential, a feeling we all know, that life moves endlessly, but we're never quite there, that no matter how far we go, there's always more tasks, more goals, more halfway points. So what did Zeno really mean? Maybe nothing more than this. That beneath our everyday assumptions about space, about time, about motion, lie questions we cannot easily answer. And maybe that's not a problem to fix, but a mystery to rest in. Zeno didn't try to change the world. He just wanted us to stop for a moment and wonder. You've walked through ancient puzzles tonight. Races that never finish, arrows that never move, and halves that never become wholes. And through it all, Zeno of Elea has whispered the same quiet question. What is motion? Really? It's strange, isn't it? We walk, we run, we grow older. And yet when we break these things apart into smaller and smaller pieces, they start to vanish. At the heart of the tortoise chase, the flickering stadium, the frozen arrow, there is a kind of stillness, a moment between moments, a hush inside time. Zeno didn't want you to panic. He wasn't trying to prove that life is a lie. He was trying to show that even the simplest things, a step, a breath, a glance, are laced with mystery. Maybe that's what makes life beautiful. Not the answers, but the questions that never quite settle. Infinity isn't just a number. It's a feeling. A soft hum in the background of everything. Always there, just beneath the surface. And maybe, just maybe, you don't need to solve it. Not tonight. Tonight is for slowing down, for letting thoughts drift like lanterns down a quiet river, for allowing wonder to live in your chest, without needing to catch it. Let Zeno's paradoxes pass you by like clouds. Strange shapes in a sleepy sky? They don't need to be held, only noticed, and then released. So rest easy now, traveler. You've walked a long way through thought. The tortoise is far behind you, or far ahead. Or maybe you were never racing at all. Good night, and may your dreams be infinite.